So what we do actually, I can see there's a small number of students here. So probably if you get a free time, just let me know. We'll have a little bit of practical session also. Uh, Probably in future practical we can have Zoom lecture, but about a couple of cases that we did in the previous batch also because of the COVID situation. So I can come with a couple of cases, like probably one obesity case, one diabetes case, one CKD case. Then we can discuss the planning. But main purpose of this lecture, unlike the previous batches, now you will not asking very much detail in the your exam. But when you are in the clinical attachments, probably you might need to practice this. So because of that, when you get a patient, you should be able to give some diet. Probably you will learn the disease during the clinical science stream. At the moment, you didn't learn very much. You only learn about the basic nutrition. But this is important to get some idea. Otherwise, until you go to final year, you don't know anything about diet. So today I'll go very basic background of diet planning. And first of all, I must sorry about delaying also because I won't reschedule it, but since we have a little more time, we'll do it today. So first thing, you have, I mean, like any other disease. Now, when you get diabetes patient, what you do first? Now, I'll ask for someone. Sandali, when you get a diabetes patient, what do you do first? Sandali Aloka. Sandali, are you there? Or Tilina, what do you do when you get a diabetic patient?
Ask about their dietary habits and.
I mean, I'm not talking about dietary side. If you get if you are GP, so if you get a diabetic patient, what do you check first?
His fasting glucose.
Yes, excellent. So you will check his investigations. So before giving any drugs or any dietary advice, probably you will check his investigation to get an idea of the patient's disease condition. Some patient might have a uncontrolled diabetes. Then probably you recommend the insulin for that kind of patient. Probably another patient is well controlled the diet without exercise, without drug sources. So probably you will not introduce drugs in that moment. So like that, you will need to have something to measure the patient's diet before giving for the dietary we call prescription or diet plan. So that is we call dietary method. I think you already learned about a nutrition assessment. In that nutrition assessment, one component is a dietary method. So here we have two methods. One is a recording methods, other one is recall methods. I think this name also shows what is it, and this is a very frequent MCQ question also. Recording means you will ask the patients to record the things. So they will come to you with a record. This is something we widely use for the young children because we can't ask them to remember it. If you, for example, a 5-year-old kid, you can't ask them to remember everything and present because they can't remember and they are not very responsible also. But probably mother can record everything. Assume you get a patient with a cystic fibrosis or something, probably you can ask your mother to record everything for the child for the yesterday or probably whole week about a food pattern and dietary intake. So which is called recording method. Other method, what we widely use is the recall method. We ask patients what happened your diet for the last week or yesterday. We call it a 24 recall. So you can ask them to record it. But there are disadvantages also in the recall method. And Tilina Dairatna, are you there? Tilina or Tilina?
Yes, sir.
Tilina, what is the disadvantage of recall method?
Sometimes the patient might not remember things, sir.
Excellent. So, yes, excellent. So actually it's dependent on the memory. So especially if you are working with an older person and probably patient with dementia or patient with especially patient after some neurotrauma, probably they can't remember. Even for the young people, they can't remember. So in that kind of situation, the recall method is not very good. Then that's why we needed two different methods. Otherwise, there's no one best method. So these are the recording methods. Actually, the best method in this world, we call gold standard method for the diet. You should remember that, called weight food intake record. So you measure everything for the next 7 days. You are measuring your glass of milk and record it. You measure your breakfast, assume it's like rice and curry. You measure the rice portion. You measure the amount of dal. Probably you measure the other sambole, or you measure the weight of the piece of fish. Everything you measure. And then for the 7 days or so, it shows a habitual diet. And there are some other things also called unweighted food intake. Probably you can ask them right here. They are not measuring, but you can write them. Ask them right, we can ask parents to write the kids' dietary habits. That is called a recording method. And 7 day, we have done this in the research level also. So we ask our patients to record everything. It's very difficult thing. It's not very easy. When they measure the banana, they have to measure the banana. Again, they have to measure the peel also. And they have to write the real weight of the edible portion of the banana. Then other one is the unweighted intake. So probably every day you can ask them to write what is the breakfast, what is lunch, what is dinner, or if there are any outside meal like that. Or you can ask a duplicate method also. This is something we done in the canteens and other food serving places. You see the patient's meal and you measure like the same thing and keep it. Then a duplicated method, then you can measure and you can analyze the calorie, everything for that portion and get idea. And now there are new electronic methods also. Actually, these things probably in your time you will be widely used. You can ask your patient to take a photograph of your meal and send to you. Then you can get idea. This is it's a fried rice, but you can't get idea because there are different type of fried rices. So you can get a photo of that. So you can see there are recording and recall methods. And one of the recall which you all can use for the patients, 24 dietary recall. So what you generally do, we are going to do it today also. And you ask your patients to recall everything from morning to evening. So amount of rice, probably two coconut spoon, and probably piece of fish, and probably dal, everything you can record it. Now again, I'll have another question. When you take a 24 recall, we are going to discuss in detail. That's one of the main tools, like a fasting blood sugar. You need to know about this. And when I ask questions, people are leaving actually. Risni, but these are not exam, don't worry. Risni, what is the disadvantage of 24 recall? Risni, run.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What is the disadvantage of 24 recall?
Recall bias.
Okay.
Recall bias.
That's a recall, but what is a now if you take a whole week, everything has a recall bias. But if you take a 24 recall, what is another disadvantage?
I'm not sure, sir.
Now, if you take your yesterday, I think it was a holiday for you.
Yes.
And what did you do yesterday? It's a usual day, or it's a little different day because of the holiday with your parents, everyone at home?
It was a bit different, yes, sir.
Yes, it's a different day. So when you have like a holiday or something previous day, probably you eat little differently also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then probably if you take a 20 recall, now if I take your 20 recall, probably yesterday would be a little special because parents at home, probably you ate something different. So that might not reflect your usual dietary habit. So that's the disadvantage of 20 recall because it may not represent actual day. Now, if you go to wedding or something, you will eat very differently compared to normal day. So what are the other things called food frequency questionnaire? So actually for Sri Lanka, we have developed that. And now we are advanced in that project also as a university project. And we have developed a food frequency questionnaire for Sri Lanka. So what we are going to do here, this is much better to get like a detailed plan. Now, for example, it has these kind of 3 rice plates. So what we can do, and if the patient want to know about the amount of rice, and they can choose here. If they really want. Now I can ask whether the amount of rice they eat like a figure A or figure B or figure C. Or they can give something in between values also. Then we know the weight of these figures. So then we can quantify the amount of rice. Otherwise they will say, okay, I ate a rice plate. So their plate is vary. The C size was a plate, A was a plate. They don't see it's a half plate. You can see, but if you take this A plate, which is a 200 gram of rice, if you take a C plate, which is 600 gram of rice, there's a huge difference. Some people eat like this also, but like a C size plate also. So because of that, it's better to use this kind of food questionnaire. So if you are doing research in a community medicine, you can use this tool actually. Another one is called diet history. Now for the patients, you have to take a medical history, surgical history, allergy history, you have to take a whole social history, everything. So what you can do is to take a diet history. Now, when you have a integrated word class or something for pharmacology, you will ask the diet history. You can't do a food questionnaire. You can't ask them to weight the food intake. So you can ask a diet history, ask about the usual food habits. How you can interpret this data? That's actually very challenging. One thing you can do a qualitative interpretation. Other one is a quantitative interpretation. Qualitative means you can divide for the 5 main food groups and compare with the minimum requirement, whether they are eating adequate amount of food groups. And other one is a quantitative, calculate the calories and energy and compare with the recommended daily intake. Now, can someone tell me what are the main food groups? Anyone? Otherwise, I will choose. I know this little boring time. So
Carbohydrates, proteins.
What are things? Tell me.
Carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Proteins.
Yeah.
Fats. Vitamins and minerals.
Those are actually not a food groups. Those are macronutrient and micronutrients. So that's wrong answer with me. So actually, what are the 5 main food groups? Anyone? It's a food groups. We don't eat carbohydrate. We don't eat protein. We eat food. So anyone? So there are 5 main food groups. One is a starch or equivalent. So it contains mainly carbohydrate, but it's a starch. Like if you take a rice or bread or potato, those are starch or equivalent. Or we can call a cereal or equivalent. Those are not a simple carbohydrate. Other one is a fruits. Other one is a vegetable. Other one is a meat or equivalent. If you take a fish and chicken and eggs, everything comes there. Last one is a milk or dairy products. So yogurt, curd, and everything is there. So those are the 5 main food groups. And there's a national and international standard for that. So in general, we were asked to have 5 fruits and vegetables per day. So now if you don't eat adequate amount of fruits and vegetables, you can compare with that. Whether you are getting adequate amount of fruits and vegetables compared to the general population. You compare that with your patients also. Because those are very important. For example, eating less fruits and vegetables causes actually heart disease and cancers. So it's very important if your patients are eating less fruits and vegetables, you can increase that. And similarly, there's a milk and dairy. So you have to check whether your patients are eating adequate milk and dairy. Otherwise, they end up with the osteoporosis, some calcium deficiency, so on. And other thing what you really mentioned is the energy and nutrient. This is a quantitative. So you can measure the plate, or you can take a 24 recall of this patient, and then you can get idea what the total calorie intake or carbohydrate intake or fat intake or protein intake, so on. For example, that whether that patient is taking 2,000 calories or 60 grams of protein per day or 30 grams of fat per day or 200 grams of carbohydrate or gram of fiber. That's something you can compare that. So actually we done this kind of study in Sri Lanka also. We know the Sri Lankan values. So I'll share something here. In Sri Lanka, this is like a starch. So it's not a real carbohydrate. Why we don't call it carbohydrate? If you take a fruits, it also contains carbohydrate. If you take a pulse, it also contains carbohydrate. If you take a dairy, it also contains carbohydrate. So it's not a carbohydrate, it's a starch. In Sinhalese, we call like a piti, saita ahara. So, and this is like a Sri Lankan intake. So we have like a values, fruits values, what is the mean value for Sri Lankan value. Why this is important? Because generally we encourage 5 fruits and vegetables per day, but Sri Lankan is only 2.6. When it comes to starch, we only encourage 6 to 11 portions or servings, but they eat 14. Sri Lanka eats more starch. Why this is important? Probably that's related for our diabetes also. So that is important. And we have done the quantitative survey also. Here we came with the energy and nutrient intake. For example, now we know the mean calorie intake for the urban Sri Lankans, rural Sri Lankans, state Sri Lankan, people who are in the state sector like a T states, and the ethnicity, according Sinhalese and Muslims and Indian Tamils. You can see some Indian Tamils less calories compared to the Muslims. You can check whether this is significant or not. Then you can get some idea. So you can see when you get someone's meal, you can get an idea about their calorie intake also. And you will be analyzing these kind of thing for your patients. And where you get like this mandarin and cow's milk, everything, then you end up with the calories. So there's a software also called NutriSurvey software. So in future, when you are doing a case presentation, sometimes you have to calculate the calories. So you have to really check whether you are taking a right amount of calories. Those are like individual values. So total value like that. So analysis value is like this. So recommendation. So compared to recommendation, the patient is eating more. Protein also probably compared to recommendation, patient eating more like that. Fat probably less. So you can get the comparative values also. Now this is like a Pratishakti Vadakana Dambala. So now why I want to show that? Now there's some mistake here. So can anyone tell me the mistake in this information box? This is a Dambala is a wing beans. 100 gram of wing beans contain the water and the calorie, protein, carbohydrate, everything. So there's some mistake here. So what is the main mistake? Can someone tell me? You can use the chat box and send also. Can someone tell me the mistake? Now, if you take this wing beans, now actually, if you look at this, it's a very watery product. Now here they have taken a wet one, a dry one. So you can see only there's 14 grams of water. So that's not actually real wing beans. So this is a dry wing bean. Probably this is a seed also. So this is not a real values. So I'll go to other slide. Probably you also a little boring of it. So we discussed about the food groups. And now if you take this kind of complex food, like a kottu, what is a food group? Then can you divide this into food groups? Anyone? No, it's very hard to divide this to food groups. So then you have to go for we call disaggregate the recipe. So if someone is like a chicken kottu or something, then you have to see the amount, the food inside, like there are paratha, which is a flour and oil, and the meat and vegetable, eggs, oil. Because your patients do not eat food as it is. They eat a mixed dishes. That's very important in Sri Lanka because now if you take a fried rice or something, there are many things. If you take this kottu, there are many things. So it's not just a roti. there are meat, there are vegetable, there's eggs, oil. So you should be get idea what this ingredient is. Now I want you to take a 24 recall. So I'll do a little bit of breakout rooms. So there's 30 actually. So I'll increase the, I'll make like a probably 10 groups. And so so one person should take a 24 recall for another person. Others can also listen. And I will randomly ask if you want to present it.